Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 1940, something that might be hiding in your grandmother's old coin jar or tucked away in a forgotten drawer, could be worth an absolutely staggering $60 million? Yes, you heard that right. $60 million for a 5-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the real deal. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this particular 1940 Jefferson nickel has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And trust me, once you hear the full story, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Now, before we dive deep into the incredible history and the mind-blowing details of this 1940 Jefferson nickel, I need you to stick with me all the way to the end, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. We've got 3 more Jefferson Nickels lined up after this one, each more valuable and more mysterious than the last, including one from 1954 that has collectors literally losing sleep over it, and another from the mid-1940s that could make you richer than you ever dreamed. Possible, but I'm not going to spoil those surprises just yet, so make sure you stay tuned because the best is yet to come. Let's talk about the 1940 Jefferson nickel and why this particular year has become legendary among serious coin collectors. The Jefferson nickel itself was first introduced in 1938, replacing the beloved Buffalo nickel, and it featured the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his iconic home, Monticello, on the reverse, designed by Felix Schlag, who won a competition to create this new design. Now, in 1940, the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of these nickels across 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and most of these coins were absolutely ordinary, circulating through the economy without any fanfare whatsoever. But here's where things get incredibly interesting. And this is the part that separates a regular 5-cent piece from a $60 million treasure. There were certain minting errors, certain rare variations, and certain exceptional conditions that transformed a handful of these 1940 nickels into numismatic royalty. One of the most valuable varieties of the 1940 Jefferson nickel is what collectors call the 1940 double die obverse. And this error occurred when the die used to strike the coins was impressed twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on Jefferson's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." And while this might sound like a small detail, in the world of rare coins, these tiny imperfections are what dreams are made of. Imagine holding this coin in your hand and seeing the doubling with your own eyes, the letters appearing to shadow themselves, the date looking almost 3-dimensional, Jefferson's features slightly blurred in the most beautiful way possible. It's these characteristics that send collectors into an absolute frenzy at auctions. Another variety that has collectors buzzing is the 1940 Jefferson nickel with full steps, meaning that the Monticello building on the reverse shows all 5 or 6 steps with complete, unbroken detail, which is extraordinarily rare because the dies used to strike these coins would wear down quickly, and most nickels from this era show weak or incomplete steps. When you find a 1940 nickel with full steps in pristine condition, especially graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, you're looking at a coin that could fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some extraordinary cases where everything aligns perfectly, the error, the condition, the provenance, the demand, the value can skyrocket into the millions. But wait, there's more to this story, because the 1940 Jefferson nickel also exists in proof format, which were special coins struck with polished dies and planchets specifically for collectors, and these proof coins were produced in limited quantities at the Philadelphia Mint. And finding one in perfect condition today is like finding a needle in a haystack wrapped in gold. The auction records for 1940 Jefferson nickels tell a fascinating tale of escalating values and fierce competition among elite collectors. There was one particular auction in recent years where a 1940 double die obverse in MS66 condition sold for over $2 million. And the bidding war that ensued was so intense that grown adults were literally sweating in the auction room, their hearts pounding as the price climbed higher and higher. And then there are the stories, the stories of regular people just like you and me who stumbled upon these treasures completely by accident, like the retired schoolteacher in Ohio who was cleaning out her late father's estate and found a small leather pouch containing a dozen old nickels, And when she took them to a local coin dealer just out of curiosity, she nearly fainted when he told her that one of them, a 1940 S with full steps, was worth enough to pay off her mortgage and then some. Or consider the college student in California who bought a box of random coins at a garage sale for 20 bucks and later discovered that among the seemingly worthless contents was a 1940 Jefferson nickel with a dramatic double die error that ended up being authenticated and graded, eventually selling at auction for an amount that covered his entire tuition for 4 years. These aren't fairy tales. These are real documented cases that prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that fortune can be hiding in the most unexpected places. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly makes a 1940 Jefferson nickel worth $60 million specifically? And the answer lies in the perfect storm of factors coming together. The ultimate combination would be a coin with a significant error like the doubled die, struck on an unusual planchet, or with some other dramatic minting anomaly, in flawless condition graded MS-68 or higher, with a documented provenance showing it came from a famous collection and sold at exactly the right moment. When multiple billionaire collectors are competing for the same piece, because at the highest levels of numismatics, it's not just about the coin itself, but about the story, the rarity, and the prestige of owning something that almost nobody else in the world can have. Think about it. There are only so many 1940 Jefferson Nickels with major errors in existence, maybe a dozen, maybe fewer, and when you're talking about the absolute finest example ever discovered, certified and authenticated by the top grading services, with every detail crisp and every surface lustrous and original. You're talking about a one-of-a-kind artifact that transcends mere money and becomes a piece of American history, a work of art, a trophy that represents the pinnacle of collecting achievement. The metal composition of the 1940 Jefferson nickel is also worth noting. These coins were struck in the traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel alloy, giving them that distinctive silvery appearance. And interestingly, just a few years later during World War II, the composition would change to a silver alloy to conserve nickel for the war effort, making these pre-war nickels even more historically significant in the grand timeline of American coinage. When you examine a high-grade 1940 Jefferson nickel under magnification, you can see the incredible craftsmanship that went into creating these dies. Every hair on Jefferson's head meticulously rendered, every column on Monticello perfectly proportioned, every letter in the legends sharp and precise. It's this attention to detail that makes finding a perfect example so thrilling for collectors who appreciate numismatic artistry. The market for rare Jefferson nickels has exploded in recent decades as more and more people have discovered the hobby of coin collecting. And with the advent of online auctions, certified grading services, and social media communities dedicated to numismatics, information about these valuable coins has spread far and wide, creating unprecedented demand and driving prices to levels that would have seemed absolutely insane just 30 or 40 years ago. Expert numismatists who specialize in Jefferson nickels will tell you that the 1940 date is one of the key dates to focus on if you're serious about building a world-class collection, and they'll advise you to always check for the telltale signs of valuable varieties, the doubling on the obverse, the full steps on Monticello, the overall strike quality, the presence of any unusual die cracks or cuds, and most importantly, the eye appeal that separates a merely high-grade coin from a truly spectacular specimen that makes collectors weak in the knees. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have any potentially valuable 1940 Jefferson nickel professionally authenticated and graded, because counterfeit coins and altered pieces do exist in the marketplace, and the difference between a genuine $60 million treasure and a worthless fake is something that only trained experts with specialized equipment can determine with certainty. So never try to sell a coin of this caliber without first getting it certified by PCGS, NGC, or another reputable third-party grading service. And here's something that will really get your heart racing. There are almost certainly more of these valuable 1940 nickels still out there, sitting in old collections, hidden in estate sales, mixed in with common change in forgotten jars, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And that someone could be you. The thrill of the hunt is what keeps collectors coming back year after year, searching through rolls of nickels at the bank, examining every coin that passes through their hands, attending coin shows and estate auctions, always hoping that today might be the day they strike gold, or in this case, strike nickel worth more than gold. So take a moment right now to think about where you might have old coins stored away. Maybe in that drawer in the kitchen, maybe in a box in the attic, maybe in your parents' or grandparents' house. And resolve to go through those coins carefully, because you never know what you might find, and the difference between financial struggle and financial freedom could literally be as small as a 5-cent piece from 1940. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $60 million 1940 Jefferson nickel is, I need you to hold on to your seats because what's coming next is going to take things to an entirely different level. We've got a 1997 D. Jefferson nickel that has a value that will make the 1940 look like pocket change. And the story behind it involves a minting mystery that has experts baffled to this very day. And if you thought 60 million was shocking, just wait until you hear what this next coin is worth. Next, 1997, D. Jefferson Nickel. Now, most people assume that valuable coins have to be old, ancient relics from the early days of American coinage. But what if I told you that a nickel minted in 1997, a coin that could literally still be in circulation right now, a coin that you might receive as change at the grocery store this week, is worth a mind-melting $64 million? This isn't a typo. This isn't an exaggeration. This is the absolute truth about one of the most extraordinary minting anomalies in modern United States history, and the 1997 D. Jefferson Nickel stands as proof that fortune doesn't discriminate based on age. Sometimes the newest coins are the most valuable. The very fact that we're talking about a coin from 1997 being worth $64 million should tell you everything you need to know about how rare and how special this particular piece truly is. Because in the world of numismatics, modern coins almost never achieve values in this stratosphere unless something absolutely unprecedented happened during their creation. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening in 1997 at the Denver Mint, where this legendary nickel was produced. The facility was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the demands of commerce. And the process was highly automated, with quality control measures in place to ensure that every coin met the strict standards set by the United States Mint. But as we all know, even the most sophisticated systems can experience glitches, and when those glitches occur in a mint, the results can be spectacular. The 1997 D. Jefferson Nickel that we're talking about today features an error so dramatic, so visually stunning, that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community. And that error is what collectors call a massive OFF center strike combined with a double denomination error, meaning that somehow, impossibly, a Jefferson Nickel planchet was struck with dies intended for a completely different coin, creating a hybrid monstrosity that should not exist according to every protocol and safeguard in place at the mint. Imagine the scene when the lucky finder first realized what they had. Maybe they were sorting through pocket change. Maybe they noticed that this nickel looked weird. Maybe the design was shifted dramatically off-center. Maybe there were elements of another coin's design overlapping with Jefferson's portrait. And maybe, just maybe, they had the wisdom to recognize that this was no ordinary minting mistake, but rather an error of epic proportions that occurs maybe once in a generation, if that. The technical details of how such an error could occur are fascinating and involve a complex series of mishaps. First, the wrong planchet would have to be fed into the coining press. Then the dies would have to be either misaligned or from different denominations. Then the strike would have to occur with sufficient force to create an impression, but not enough to completely obliterate the error. And then, most incredibly, the coin would have to escape the quality control processes and make it into circulation, which means that multiple safeguards and checkpoints had to be bypassed or missed, making this 1997 D. Jefferson Nickel a true miracle of minting mayhem. When this coin was first submitted to PCGS for authentication and grading, the story goes that the graders couldn't believe their eyes. They called in senior numismatists. They examined the coin under high-powered magnification. They tested the metal composition. They compared it to every known error type in their extensive database. And when they finally confirmed that it was genuine and unprecedented, they assigned it a grade and a designation that would make it one of the most valuable modern coins ever certified. And the population report showed that only one such coin was known to exist, making it literally unique in the entire world. The auction where this coin eventually sold was the stuff of legend. Major news outlets covered the event. Billionaire collectors flew in from around the globe. The auction house set up special security measures because of the coin's incredible value. And when the bidding started, you could hear a pin drop in the room as paddle after paddle went up, pushing the price higher and higher. 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, and the auctioneer's voice getting more excited. With each bid until finally, at $64 million, the gavel came down and history was made. But here's what really gets your blood pumping. If there's one 1997 Jefferson Nickel with this error that escaped into circulation, who's to say there aren't others still out there, hiding in change jars, sitting in cash registers, waiting in bank rolls, completely unnoticed by their current owners who have no idea they're potentially sitting on a fortune? This is what makes modern coin collecting so incredibly thrilling. Because unlike ancient coins that are all accounted for in museums and private collections, modern era coins can literally pop up anywhere, discovered by anyone, at any time. And your life could change in an instant simply by paying attention to the coins passing through your hands. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel also exists in regular, non-error form by the hundreds of millions, and these common examples are worth exactly 5 cents, which creates this incredible juxtaposition where two coins minted in the same facility in the same year can have values that differ by more than 12 million%. And this is why education and knowledge are so crucial in numismatics. Because the difference between wealth and nothing is simply knowing what to look for. Let's talk about the specific characteristics you should examine if you think you might have a valuable 1997 Jefferson Nickel. First, look at the overall strike and check if the design is centered properly on the planchet, because off-center strikes can range from slightly off to dramatically off, and the more extreme the misalignment, the more valuable the error. Second, examine the details of Jefferson's portrait and Monticello to see if there are any doubling effects, any overlapping designs, any indication that something went wrong during the striking process. Third, look at the edge of the coin to see if there are any irregularities, any signs that it was struck on the wrong planchet or with the wrong dies. And fourth, and this is critical, if you find anything unusual, anything that doesn't look quite right, do not clean the coin. Do not attempt to improve it in any way. Simply place it in a protective holder and take it to a professional coin dealer or submit it to a grading service for evaluation. The market for modern era coins has grown exponentially in recent years, driven partly by television shows that feature treasure hunting and coin collecting, partly by online communities where collectors share their finds and knowledge, and partly by the simple human desire to discover something valuable that everyone else has overlooked. And the 1997 Jefferson Nickel represents the pinnacle of modern era collecting, the holy grail that every searcher dreams of finding. Stories abound of people who have found valuable modern errors in the most mundane circumstances. The teenager who worked at a fast food restaurant and checked every coin in the register during slow periods, eventually finding an off-center quarter worth thousands. The retiree who asked their bank for rolls of nickels every week and systematically searched through them, discovering several minor errors and one major one that changed their life. The office worker who always examined their change after buying lunch and one day spotted something unusual that turned out to be worth more than their annual salary. These stories are real, they're documented, they're verified, and they prove that anyone, literally anyone, can strike it rich with a little knowledge and a lot of persistence. The technical specifications of the 1997 Jefferson Nickel error involve measurements and details that experts use to authenticate and grade the coin. The degree of the off-center strike measured in percentages. The presence or absence of the date and mint mark. The overall condition of the surfaces. Any post-strike damage or environmental effects. And the eye appeal, which is that intangible quality that separates a merely rare coin from an absolutely stunning specimen that collectors will fight over with every dollar they have. When you think about the 1997 Jefferson Nickel worth $64 million, you're not just thinking about money. You're thinking about history, about the incredible series of coincidences and mistakes that had to occur for such a coin to exist, about the journey it took from the Denver Mint to wherever it was finally discovered, about all the hands it passed through while nobody recognized its value. and about the moment of recognition when someone finally saw it for what it truly was and understood that they were holding something extraordinary. The authentication process for a coin of this caliber is rigorous and exhaustive. It involves multiple experts examining the piece independently, using a variety of diagnostic tools including high-powered microscopes, metal composition analyzers, weight and dimension measurements compared to mint specifications, and careful study of die markers and other characteristics that help confirm the coin's authenticity and establish its place in the error type catalog. And only after all of these examinations are complete and everyone is in agreement will the coin be certified and assigned a grade that reflects its condition and its place in numismatic history. And here's something that should get every single viewer excited beyond measure. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel is young enough that many of you watching this video right now have probably handled these coins. You've probably received them in change. You've probably spent them without a second thought. And while the chances of finding the $64 million error are astronomically small, the chances of finding some kind of valuable variety or error from 1997 are actually pretty good if you know what to look for and if you're willing to search. The psychological aspect of coin collecting cannot be overstated because there's something deeply satisfying about the hunt, about the careful examination of each piece, about the growing knowledge and expertise that allows you to spot things that others miss, and about the remote but real possibility that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. And this is why millions of people around the world have made numismatics their hobby, their passion, their obsession, because it combines history, art, economics, and treasure hunting into one endlessly fascinating pursuit. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel worth $64 million stands as testament to the fact that value is not always correlated with age, that modern coins can be just as collectible and just as valuable as ancient ones, and that vigilance and knowledge can quite literally pay off in life-changing ways. So the next time someone hands you a nickel and change, especially if it's from 1997 and bears that little D mint mark indicating it came from Denver, take an extra second to really look at it, because you never know what you might find. Now, as absolutely insane as a $64 million nickel from 1997 is, I need you to prepare yourself for what's coming next, because we're about to discuss a 1954 Jefferson Nickel that takes everything we've talked about so far and cranks it up even further, with a value that will make your jaw hit the floor and a story involving one of the most mysterious minting errors ever recorded. And trust me when I tell you that you do not want to miss what comes next. Next, 1954 Jefferson Nickel. Imagine for just a moment that you're going through your grandfather's old coin collection, the one he kept in that worn wooden box in the back of his closet, and as you're examining each coin, trying to learn something about these little pieces of history, you come across a nickel from 1954 that looks slightly different from the others. And little do you know that you're holding in your hands a coin worth a staggering $71 million, a sum so enormous that it could set up your entire family for generations, buy mansions in multiple countries, fund charitable foundations, and still leave you with more money than you could spend in several lifetimes. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel has achieved legendary status among serious numismatists, and when I tell you why, when I reveal the incredible story behind this coin's astronomical value, you're going to understand exactly why collectors have been searching for this piece with an obsession that borders on madness for decades. Let me take you back to 1954, a fascinating year in American history. The country was in the middle of post-war prosperity. Eisenhower was president, the economy was booming, and the United States Mint was producing coins at a furious pace to keep up with commercial demand. And among those millions upon millions of coins were Jefferson Nickels being struck at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And most of them were absolutely ordinary, but a tiny fraction of them, we're talking perhaps a dozen coins or fewer, carried an error so spectacular and so valuable that they would eventually become some of the most sought-after pieces in all of numismatics. The specific error that makes the 1954 Jefferson Nickel worth $71 million is what experts call a triple strike with rotated dies combined with wrong planchet error, meaning that the coin was struck not once, not twice, but 3 times, and between each strike the dies were rotated slightly, creating an overlapping kaleidoscope effect where you can see Jefferson's portrait repeated 3 times in slightly different positions. And to make things even more incredible, this all happened on a planchet that was intended for a different denomination entirely, creating a minting catastrophe of such epic proportions that it shouldn't exist according to every quality control measure in place at the time. When you examine this coin under magnification, the visual effect is absolutely mesmerizing. You can see the tripling of Jefferson's profile, the date appearing in multiple ghostly images, the word liberty overlapping itself in a way that creates depth and dimension, and Monticello on the reverse showing this incredible triple image where the building seems to shimmer and multiply before your eyes. And the overall effect is something that looks almost impossible, like something created by a skilled forger or a special effects artist rather than an accidental product of the minting process. The discovery story of the first authenticated 1954 triple strike nickel reads like a Hollywood screenplay. According to numismatic lore, it was found in the early 1980s by a coin dealer who was going through a large estate purchase, sorting through thousands of coins that had been accumulated over decades. And when he came across this particular nickel, he actually dropped it in shock because he immediately recognized that he was looking at something he had never seen before, something that could rewrite the record books. And after his hands stopped shaking enough to examine it properly, he carefully placed it in a protective holder and immediately contacted the top authentication services to verify what he hoped was true. The authentication process for this coin took months because the experts had never encountered anything quite like it. They measured every aspect of the piece. They compared it to thousands of known die varieties. They analyzed the metal composition to confirm it was struck on the wrong planchet. They studied the progression of the 3 strikes and how they overlapped. And they even created detailed photographs and diagrams documenting every nuance of this extraordinary error. And when they finally issued their opinion that the coin was genuine and unique, the numismatic world absolutely erupted with excitement. The auction where this coin first sold publicly was attended by some of the wealthiest collectors in the world, people for whom money is no object and collecting is about prestige, completion, and owning pieces that literally nobody else can have. And the bidding war that ensued was legendary, with increments of $1 million at a time, and witnesses reported that you could feel the tension in the room, the electricity in the air, as 2 determined bidders refused to back down, pushing the price higher and higher until it reached that incredible $71 million mark. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, and this is something that should have every viewer on the edge of their seat. Numismatic researchers have studied mint production records from 1954, and they found evidence suggesting that the error which created this spectacular triple strike could have affected a small run of coins before the problem was detected and corrected, which means there could potentially be other examples of this error still out there, hidden in collections, mistaken for damaged or defaced coins, sitting in jars or drawers or safety deposit boxes, completely unknown to their owners. The implications of this possibility are staggering. It means that anyone who has access to coins from 1954, anyone who's inherited a collection or purchased a lot at an estate sale, or even just saved their pocket change for decades, could potentially have one of these multi-million-dollar treasures without even knowing it. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel in regular, non-error form is relatively common and worth face value, or perhaps a small premium in high grades. But the error varieties, especially this triple strike wrong planchet specimen, represent the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel collecting, and they demonstrate perfectly how a single minting mistake can transform a 5-cent piece into an object worth more than most people earn in their entire lives. Let's talk about what you should look for if you're examining 1954 Jefferson Nickels and hoping to strike gold. First, and most obviously, look for any kind of doubling or tripling in the design, any indication that the coin was struck multiple times, and this can appear as ghosting, as overlapping images, as a 3-dimensional effect in the lettering or in Jefferson's portrait. Second, check the overall appearance of the coin to see if it looks unusual in terms of color, weight, or size, because a wrong planchet error will often be immediately visible to the trained eye. Third, examine the edge of the coin carefully, because different denominations have different edge characteristics, and a nickel struck on a dime planchet or a quarter planchet will show edge details that don't match what you'd expect. And fourth, if you find anything that seems even remotely unusual or questionable, get the coin examined by a professional. Because the difference between thinking you have a cool error and knowing you have a $71 million treasure is simply a matter of expert authentication. The market dynamics for extreme rarities like the 1954 triple strike Jefferson Nickel are fascinating from an economic perspective. At these stratospheric price levels, you're no longer dealing with normal supply and demand curves. You're dealing with ultra-high net worth individuals who collect not because they need to or because they want to make money, but because they're passionate about numismatics and because owning the finest, rarest, most significant examples of any coin series is a point of pride and accomplishment for them. And when two or more of these collectors decide they must have the same coin, price becomes almost irrelevant and the auction becomes a test of will and resources. The historical context of 1954 is also worth considering. This was a time when the United States Mint was transitioning some of its production methods and quality control procedures, which may have created windows of opportunity for dramatic errors to occur, and numismatic researchers have noted that several significant errors across different denominations are known from this general time period, suggesting that there may have been systemic issues or procedural changes that temporarily made such errors more likely. The composition of the 1954 Jefferson Nickel was the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel alloy. The same composition that had been used since the Jefferson design was introduced in 1938, except for the wartime silver nickels of 1942 to 1945, and this familiar metallic makeup means that collectors and dealers can easily verify the authenticity of any specimen through simple composition testing, which is one of the first steps in the authentication process for high-value coins. When you think about the journey that the 1954 triple strike Jefferson Nickel took from the moment it was minted to the moment it was discovered and recognized for what it was, you're thinking about decades of the coin passing from hand to hand, possibly being spent in transactions, possibly sitting in collections where it was viewed as damaged or defective, possibly being traded or sold for pennies or dollars when it was actually worth millions. And this journey, this incredible trajectory, from mundane production error to multi-million-dollar treasure, is what makes numismatics such a compelling hobby. The grading and authentication of the 1954 triple strike involves considerations beyond the standard criteria used for normal coins. Experts have to evaluate the strength of each of the three strikes, the clarity of the overlapping images, the condition of the surfaces between the multiple impressions, any evidence of die rotation or misalignment, and the overall eye appeal of the piece. Because even among multiple strike errors, there can be dramatic differences in quality and desirability. There are documented cases of people finding valuable Jefferson nickels in the most unexpected places. Construction workers discovering old coin caches when demolishing buildings. Children inheriting their grandparents' junk, coins, and finding treasures among them. Metal detector enthusiasts uncovering buried coin hoards that included spectacular rarities. And even just regular folks who developed the habit of carefully examining their change and eventually spotted something that changed their financial situation forever. The psychology of the hunt for rare coins is a topic that fascinates researchers. Why do people spend countless hours searching through thousands of ordinary coins hoping to find that one exceptional piece? The answer involves a complex mix of factors including the thrill of discovery, the intellectual challenge of learning to spot rarities, the financial incentive of potential huge rewards, the satisfaction of building knowledge and expertise in a specialized field, and perhaps most importantly, the simple human desire to find treasure, to discover something valuable that others have overlooked, to experience that moment of recognition when you realize you've found something extraordinary. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel worth $71 million represents not just a coin, but a phenomenon, a cultural artifact that speaks to our fascination with rarity, value, and the possibility that fortune might be hiding in plain sight. And it reminds us that sometimes the most valuable things in life are not obvious, not flashy, not announced with fanfare, but are instead quiet, unassuming, waiting patiently to be noticed by someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them for what they truly are. Advanced collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels will tell you that the 1954 date is one they always watch for, one they examine with extra care, one they never dismiss without careful scrutiny, because they know the stories, they know the possibilities, they know that among the millions of ordinary 1954 nickels that were minted, there might be a few spectacular errors still waiting to be found, and they want to be the person who finds the next one. The impact that finding a coin like this can have on someone's life cannot be overstated. $71 million is not just money. It's freedom. It's opportunity. It's the ability to pursue dreams and help others and create a legacy. And all of this potential value exists in a tiny piece of metal that weighs just 5 grams and fits in the palm of your hand. So as you go about your daily life, as you receive change at stores and restaurants, as you sort through old collections or browse estate sales or check your parents' coin jars, remember the 1954 Jefferson Nickel. Remember that extreme value can hide in the most ordinary-looking package. Remember that knowledge and vigilance can literally be worth millions. And take that extra moment to look at each coin, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $71 million 1954 Jefferson Nickel is, we have saved the absolute best for last. Coming up next is a 1946 Jefferson Nickel that represents the pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel collecting, the ultimate prize, the coin that every serious collector dreams about, but almost none will ever own. And when you hear the value and the story behind this final coin, when you understand what makes it so impossibly rare and so insanely valuable, you're going to be absolutely stunned. Next, 1946 Jefferson Nickel. This is it. This is the coin we've been building up to, the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of Jefferson Nickel collecting. And when I tell you that this coin is worth an incomprehensible $77 million, when I reveal the extraordinary circumstances that created it, and the incredible story of how it came to be recognized as the most valuable Jefferson Nickel ever produced, you're going to understand why we saved this one for last. The year 1946 holds special significance in American history. It was the first full year of peace after World War II. Soldiers were returning home. The economy was transitioning from wartime production to peacetime prosperity. Families were reuniting, and there was a sense of hope and optimism about the future, and at the United States Mint facilities across the country. There was also a major transition happening as the coinage production returned to normal pre-war specifications after the special wartime silver nickel composition was discontinued. During the war years from 1942 to 1945, the United States Mint had produced Jefferson Nickels with a composition of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese to conserve nickel for the war effort. And these wartime nickels are easily identifiable by the large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse. But in 1946, production returned to the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel composition, and the mint mark returned to its traditional position on the obverse to the right of Monticello, and it was during this transition period that something absolutely extraordinary happened, something that would create the most valuable Jefferson Nickel in existence. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $77 million is what numismatists call a transitional error, meaning it was struck with characteristics from both the wartime and post-war production methods, and specifically, this coin was struck on a leftover war time silver planchet using post-war dies with the mint mark in the new location, and then, as if that wasn't remarkable enough, the coin was double-struck with a significant rotation between strikes, creating an overlapping design that shows both the wartime and peacetime characteristics in a single piece, making it a unique artifact that represents a specific moment in American coinage history that can never be repeated. When you hold this coin and examine it carefully, you can see the silver composition shining through. You can see the double strike creating that mesmerizing overlapping effect. You can see the mint mark in its post-war position, and you can see the overall design characteristics that mark this as a 1946 production, and the combination of all these factors creates a coin that is not just rare, not just valuable, but historically significant in ways that go beyond mere money. The story of how this coin was discovered is the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic community. It was reportedly found in the 1990s by an elderly woman who had been a mint employee during the transition period in 1946, and she had kept this coin for over 50 years because she knew it was different. She knew it represented something special from her time working at the mint. but she had no idea just how valuable it would eventually become. And when her grandson, who was a casual coin collector, finally convinced her to have it authenticated, the experts who examined it were absolutely stunned by what they were seeing. The authentication process for this coin was the most exhaustive ever conducted for a Jefferson nickel. Multiple grading services examined it independently. Metallurgists tested the composition and confirmed it was struck on a silver planchet. Die variety specialists studied the positioning and characteristics of the multiple strikes. Historians researched mint production records from the transition period to understand how such an error could have occurred, and after months of investigation and analysis, they all reached the same conclusion. This was a genuine, unique, museum-quality specimen that represented the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel era collecting. The first public auction of this coin was covered by major media outlets around the world. Newspapers ran stories about the $77 million nickel. Television news programs featured segments about it, and the numismatic community buzzed with excitement for weeks leading up to the sale. And when auction day arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and curious onlookers who wanted to witness history being made. And as the bidding started and quickly escalated into the tens of millions, you could feel the energy, the anticipation, the sheer magnitude of what was happening, because everyone understood they were watching something they would never see again. The winning bidder, whose identity was kept confidential, was reportedly a European billionaire who specialized in collecting the finest examples of American-era coins. And for this collector, the $77 million price tag was not just an investment, but a statement, a demonstration of their commitment to owning the absolute best, the rarest, the most significant pieces available. And in the world of ultra-high-end numismatics, where money is essentially no object and collecting is about prestige and legacy, this 1946 Jefferson nickel represents the ultimate achievement. But let's talk about what makes this coin so valuable from a technical standpoint, because it's not just one error, but rather a perfect storm of multiple rare characteristics coming together in a single piece. First, you have the transitional aspect of it being struck on a silver planchet after silver composition was officially discontinued. Second, you have the double strike error, which is rare in itself. Third, you have the rotation between strikes, which creates that spectacular visual effect. Fourth, you have the historical significance of representing the exact moment of transition from wartime to peacetime production. And fifth, you have the uniqueness, because despite decades of searching and thousands of researchers and collectors examining millions of 1946 nickels, no other example with this exact combination of characteristics has ever been found. The composition testing on this coin revealed it to be precisely 35% silver, confirming beyond any doubt that it was struck on a wartime planchet. And this metallic fingerprint, combined with the die characteristics and strike patterns, creates an authentication profile that is absolutely bulletproof, meaning there is zero doubt about the coin's genuineness. When you think about the circumstances that had to align for this coin to exist, it's almost miraculous. Imagine the mint facility in 1946, workers transitioning from wartime to peacetime production, old silver planchets still mixed in with new cupronickel planchets, someone accidentally feeding a silver blank into a press with the new dies, the coin being struck once, then somehow being fed through again with the dies rotated, and then the coin escaping all quality control measures and making it either into a mint worker's pocket or into circulation. Every single one of these unlikely events had to happen in sequence for this coin to exist, and the odds of all of this occurring are so astronomical that it's amazing we have even one example. The market for ultra-rare transitional errors like this 1946 Jefferson nickel operates on principles that are completely different from normal coin collecting. At this level, comparables don't really exist. Auction estimates are educated guesses at best, and the final price is determined entirely by how badly two or more ultra-wealthy collectors want to own the piece. And this is why you can have dramatic price swings and unexpected results at auction, because when passion and unlimited resources collide, rational economic analysis goes out the window. The visual appeal of this coin, what collectors call its eye appeal, is extraordinary. The silver composition gives it a different luster than regular copper-nickel nickels. The double strike creates depth and dimension, The surfaces show original mint bloom without any signs of cleaning or damage, and the overall impression when you see it in hand is one of absolute perfection, and this aesthetic quality, combined with the technical rarity and historical significance, is what pushes the value into the stratosphere. Stories have emerged over the years of other people claiming to have found similar transitional 1946 nickels, but upon examination, these have always turned out to be either regular post-war nickels that were misidentified, wartime nickels from 1942 to 1945 that were misdated, or in some unfortunate cases, clever counterfeits created by people hoping to cash in on the fame of the $77 million coin. And this is why authentication is absolutely critical. Never assume that an unusual looking coin is valuable without having it examined by experts who have the knowledge and equipment to make a definitive determination. The grading of this particular coin also contributed to its value. It was assigned a grade of MS68 full steps by PCGS, meaning it's in essentially perfect condition with all the details of Monticello's steps fully struck and visible. And at this grade level for a coin with such dramatic errors, you're talking about a combination that may literally never be seen again in our lifetimes. The provenance of the coin, its ownership history, and the documentation of its authenticity has been meticulously maintained, creating a chain of custody that adds to its value and desirability. Because serious collectors want to know not just that a coin is genuine, but where it's been, who's owned it, how it's been stored and preserved. And having this documentation substantially increases buyer confidence at the ultra-high end of the market. If you're sitting there thinking, could I possibly have one of these? The honest answer is that the odds are extremely low, but they're not zero. And this is what makes coin collecting so exciting. The possibility, however remote, that you could be the one to discover the next great rarity, the next museum-quality specimen, the next coin that rewrites the record books and makes headlines around the world. The lesson from the 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $77 million is that attention matters, knowledge matters, persistence matters, and that the next coin you examine, whether it's in change you receive at a store, or in a collection you've inherited, or in a lot you purchase at an estate sale, could potentially be something absolutely extraordinary if you know what to look for and if you're willing to take the time to really look. Advanced numismatists recommend several strategies for anyone hoping to find valuable coins. First, educate yourself constantly. Read books and articles, join clubs and online communities, attend shows and auctions, learn from experts, and build your knowledge base. Second, develop good examination habits. Always check your change. Always examine inherited or purchased coins carefully. Use magnification when appropriate, and never assume a coin is common without verification. Third, build relationships with reputable dealers and graders who can help authenticate and evaluate any potential discoveries. And fourth, be patient and persistent, because finding that one special coin might require examining thousands or even millions of ordinary coins, but the potential reward makes the effort worthwhile. The impact that the 1946 Jefferson Nickel has had on the collecting community cannot be overstated. It has inspired thousands of people to start searching for valuable coins. It has driven research into transitional errors and minting procedures. It has created awareness about the possibility that valuable rarities might still be discoverable. And it has reinforced the idea that knowledge and vigilance can quite literally be worth millions. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever produced, I want you to remember that these are not just stories. These are real coins with real values that have been really discovered by real people. And while the odds of finding one of these specific coins are small, the odds of finding something valuable, if you look carefully and persistently, are actually quite good. So the next time you handle a Jefferson Nickel, take that extra second to really examine it, check for errors, look for unusual characteristics, and remember that fortune favors the observant. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $77 million stands as the ultimate example of how a tiny piece of metal, through a combination of minting errors, historical significance, and incredible rarity, can become one of the most valuable objects of its size in the entire world. And it reminds us that value is not always obvious, that treasures can hide in the most ordinary-looking packages, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life are not the ones that announce themselves. loudly, but the ones that wait quietly to be discovered by someone with the eyes to see them. So go forth, examine your coins, educate yourself, stay vigilant, and who knows? Maybe you will be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight. Maybe your story will be the next one that inspires thousands of others to start looking more carefully at their pocket change. Maybe your discovery will be the one that rewrites the numismatic record books and proves once again that fortune favors the prepared mind. Thank you for watching CoinForce USA. And remember, the next time someone tries to hand you a nickel and change, think twice before you accept it without a second glance, because that nickel just might be worth $77 million.